Joining us now with his reaction is Panetta, former defense secretary during the Obama administration. He also previously served as the director of the CIA and White House chief of staff. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. It's the first time we've had the opportunity to speak with you since this war began, a war that the defense secretary, that President Trump himself has said is going to be a short term. The president continually describes it as an excursion. The defense secretary says this will not be another quagmire in the Middle East. If that is the case, why would they need $200 billion more in supplemental funding?
Well, it's obvious that, when you go after 7,000 targets and you're continuing to do attacks, that it's wearing down our supplies of bombs and missiles and all the other elements that make up for an attack force. So I'm sure they're going to have to replenish that. And it looks like with that price tag that they're not only looking at replenishing, but trying to add to our supplies and our weapons for the future as well. So it's not going to be an easy sell on Capitol Hill, because this is the moment where the Congress does have the power of the purse. And so I'm sure they're going to be asking a lot of questions about exactly what the status of the war is and how long this war is going to continue into the future.
Yeah, the president, Mr. Secretary, says the war is already won. He says we've already won it. Today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there would need to be a ground component to achieve regime change, and most analysts seem to agree with that. At this point now, almost 20 days into this conflict, are we closer to the end or the beginning?
Well, I think that's the issue that the country is concerned about, and it's the issue that's confronting the president. President right now is between a rock and a hard place, very frankly. On the one hand, he stated on the evening of the attack that this was about regime change, and that both he and Netanyahu thought that ultimately it would be a short war and that the regime would come down pretty quickly. That didn't happen, and intelligence makes clear right now that it looks like the regime is more entrenched than ever. So the issue then becomes, okay, based on our military targets, we are obviously making great gains. The president said we've achieved a win already. He's declared victory. But there's an issue here, which is we're not going to be able to get a ceasefire. We're not going to be able to get Iran to agree to terms of a ceasefire as long as they keep the Straits of Hormuz closed. And that gives them tremendous leverage. And so there is really no alternative here. But for the United States, it's not going to happen by Israel. It's not going to happen with allies. I'm sure allies like Japan and others are willing to be helpful. But in the end, it's going to be the United States that has to take steps to open up the Straits of Hormuz. That's critical in order to ultimately get the leverage back that we need in order to convince Iran that we need a ceasefire.
So, Mr. Secretary, can the U.S. take those steps, get the strait back open without a presence on the ground? I guess that becomes the fundamental question. Is it your expectation as a former defense secretary who has run the Pentagon that that is going to be the reality?
No, that's the bottom line. We've looked at this a long time, even when I was Secretary of Defense, and the steps that would have to be taken. There clearly has to be an ability to secure 50 miles on either side of that strait, plus 100 miles in depth into Iran, to be able to secure that area and make sure that ships in the straits are not going to be able to be attacked. In addition to that, you need to have almost constant air surveillance using armed helicopters, using F-35s. And then you need our Aegis destroyers to be there in order to be able to protect any ships that they're escorting through the straits. The issue is going to become, do you need boots on the ground? I'm not sure that's absolutely necessary if we can go after whatever capabilities Iran has in that surrounding area and maintain constant surveillance. But that's going to be one of the tough issues that has to be looked at, because it may require some boots on the ground in order to initially secure that area.
So you've clearly modeled this, Secretary. This is fascinating. Did you, if I heard you correctly, you said 1,000 miles wide, 100 miles deep in guarding that coastline?
50 miles on each side of the strait.
Understood.
And 100 miles deep in order to secure the area.
So that's a huge territory. How many thousands of troops would that require?
It would require a tremendous amount of air surveillance. It would require a tremendous amount of targeting whatever capabilities they have within that area. And as
would
I
that
said,
effectively be a no-fly zone, Secretary?
Exactly. You've got to have a total no-fly zone, and we have to totally be in the air 100% of the time in order to make sure that it remains secure. It's not easy. It's tough. And obviously, it's going to expand the war just by the nature of what needs to be done. But unless we open the Straits of Hormuz, then Iran continues to maintain strong leverage over how this war proceeds. You know what the price of oil is. You know what's happening to oil facilities there. If that continues, it's going to not only damage our economy, it'll damage the world economy.
Well, and that gets to the political implications. And of course, you are not just a former defense secretary speaking to us. You are a former White House chief of staff. So I wonder how you're viewing the messaging of this administration, of this president, around the economic consequence of this conflict, and if they're doing an adequate job in justifying it.
I think the president needs to understand that the burden of what's happening is really impacting on the average American, on the individual that has to get up in the morning, buy gas, get to work, get home, and it's becoming a real burden. I hear it myself when I go to the gas station to fill up. People are very worried about the price of fuel and what they have to pay. And the damage that that's doing. The president needs to understand this is very much a real bread and butter issue when it comes to affordability. And for that reason, I think, he keeps saying we can get through it. He keeps saying this will be a short war. But I think what everybody wants is for the president to have a clear plan as to how he's going to bring this war to an end.